Okay. Okay, welcome Ananya
Hello.
and Maria.
Hi.
Okay, so like I said, I wasn't, this was harder for me to read. It seemed like a lot of stuff until I got to the end, and I kind of went back then and put it in a little bit of order, and then it made a little more sense. I love Annie Besant's writings, but for some reason, sharing, anybody else felt the same. I felt like she was trying to convince us of the antiquity of Zoroastrianism and its value. And for me, I was just like, well, you just have to say that it's antiquity, and I'm with you. So I felt like she put a lot of energy into explaining why this was important to study. So anybody else have any comments or anything to start?
It would be interesting to see what debates were going on at the time.
Right.
Because it may have been relevant when
Right.
Annie Besant was giving these lectures, you know, like some debates now that may go on now and be relevant, but not in the future.
Right, right. So, okay.
I did like the end, the last couple of pages, because she seemed to go a little deeper into the, or brought it back more towards the beginning. Seemed to be moving back towards the esoteric nature of it, and I enjoyed those pages. But in the beginning, in the middle, between last week and the end, it seemed like she was rushing a little bit. But I love her writing also, you know.
Right, right. So anyway, this is the little outline that I came up with, and we can start when you guys, wherever you want to start. So the literature, there were 5 pieces of literature that she shows us here. One was the Yasnas, which are the hymns and the teachings from the mouth of the great prophet. Next, the second part of the yasna are the prayers and the ceremonies, both to the supreme deity and to the spiritual hierarchy. She writes here, in Zoroastrianism, as in every other ancient faith, there was no gap in the universe, no empty space, no place where there were not living intelligences, no place where spiritual beings were not working. From man near the base of the ladder to the supreme God at its head, there were ranged intelligences mounting higher and higher, more and more divine, and all these were objects of adoration, a fact to which the whole literature of Zoroastrianism bears testimony.
In the West, especially the Christian theosophers, with Jacob Boehme and all of them, they used to call this the chain of being. So it's like a chain, but in singular, not the chain of beings, but the chain of being, like universal being where there is a chain. You know?
Right, right, because she seems to try to make sure that we understand that, or at least that I got from this, that there wasn't man here and God here and nothing in between, that there was talking about that duality. So it seemed like this spiritual hierarchy is what fit in between. I don't know if anybody else caught that part.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, so the third piece of literature she talks about is the Visparad, which she says there's a preparatory invocations to be used before and after prayers and ceremonies, and then likened it to the Vedas. Okay, so now I'm on page 64 in my book. After that were the Nasks, the sciences of every kind, the whole range of sciences and laws. And then the last one was the Yashts, or the little Avestas, and their invocations for the layman. So the other ones must more for the priestlies. So this is more of the practice.
Now, what about the Vendidad, which is the Book of Laws, affecting the preservation of purity, alike in external nature and in man?
Right. Of these, only one works. Yeah, that's part of the Nasks, and the only one that survived.
Okay, all right, okay, yep, I see what you, yeah.
Okay, so if we're okay with that there, I'm at the bottom of page 65. The paragraph starts, I have explained, rather these preliminary details. But at the bottom, it says, the position, this is where she says the position of Zoroastrianism is at one with the occult teaching on all important points save one. In the scriptures, as accepted by Orthodox Parsees, reincarnation is not found. It is taught in the fragments preserved by the Greeks. Did anybody else?
Yeah, so I was trying to relate that to one of the 5 books you just talked about, or 5 areas, but I guess it's not contained in any of those.
Right.
Which didn't really kind of make sense to me.
Well, no, remember Aban told us that, and in that there's a paragraph somewhere in between there that said after the burning of the library in
Right.
Persepolis, so only fragments are left. So maybe that fragment of reincarnation got lost. Yeah.
Yeah, because Besant says that there are some Greek versions where that is included.
Yeah.
I mean, reincarnation is such a strong underpinning of everything. You would think it would be mentioned throughout all of the texts, or in one relation or another, rather than it's so exclusive. It's exclusively only mentioned outside the main text. Doesn't seem to make sense given its importance as a pivotal, fundamental belief.
Well, couldn't you say the same about reincarnation in the Bible?
Yeah, the Judeo-Christian tradition. Many references at all.
Yeah, but it seemed like in the Christian tradition, I don't know if this is the right word, intentionally downplayed it, whereas I could be, because there was a lot of the Christian religion was really like a business, whereas I don't get the impression, I got the impression that Zoroastrianism was really taught as a spiritual religious practice.
Well, Christ was very careful about that. He didn't deny it, but he didn't feel that it was a good thing to bring it into the present. It would somehow, you wouldn't have the experience in the present or something. It would just be,
Or the exoteric portion.
He said it himself, that he guarded against it. I forget, I don't know what gospel it was in, but he was careful. He didn't deny it.
Right.
That it was not a good idea to bring that in daily living, in the sense that you were living in the present.
And I thought at the end of this, the chapter on Zoroastrianism, I thought, Annie Besant did talk a lot about how similar it was with Hinduism. And that, that it's the second one, and there was a tie. So it makes me think that there must have been some connection to reincarnation. That was kind of what I was thinking more, that that it had a very close tie to reincarnation due to its association with Hinduism.
I was reading a little bit from somewhere else about Zoroastrianism and reincarnation, and they say it's only the esoteric Zoroastrians really advocate for reincarnation. So there is an esoteric, I guess, sect within the religion that, and they describe all the parallels for that justify a belief in reincarnation.
So a lot of what we're seeing here is, we're talking about, and she's presenting is the exoteric, the outer shell, without a lot of the.
No, I think,
Because I felt like she was presenting more the esoteric, you know, the kind of parallelisms to theosophy, and I enjoyed reading it. I just expected to see it more, but you know,
I
it is
think
what it is.
she does talk about the occult teachings, but my guess is that she's saying here is that from the fragments of books that are left, or literature that is left from Zoroastrianism, reincarnation isn't in any of those fragments. So, yeah, so, all right.
Well, thank you.
So right after that, right after the reincarnation, she says, let us now turn to the philosophy and the religion themselves. Here is where she kind of went in great detail. I don't want to say went on and on and on. But here I got that what she was talking about is Ahura Mazda, and then what was beyond and above Ahura Mazda, then the Trinity that Ahura Mazda was part of with spirit and matter, then the hierarchy that comes, not really, she didn't say comes from, but the hierarchy that is the archangels, she called them, the living intelligences. And then she talks about the fire. And then she talked about the fire being the son of Ahura Mazda, and then man as a microcosm. So those are like the main points that I picked out. If anybody else has anything else, any other additional points to that, obviously jump right in. But to me, that helped me kind of figure out where to go from here. Okay. So I'll start right here. At the head, I'm on the middle of page 66. At the head of the manifested universe stands Ahura Mazda, sometimes translated as the living wisdom, sometimes as the Lord of wisdom, sometimes as the wise Lord. The cuneiform inscriptions have like Ahura Mazda, the Sassian Ahura Mazda, and the modern Parisian, the Hormazd or Ormazd. So those are all the different names for Ahura Mazda. Okay. He is the supreme, the universal, the all-pervasive, the source, and the fountain of life. In the Zoroastrian religion, he holds the same position as the manifested Brahman of the Upanishads, who came forth at the beginning, the one, the source of life to man. He is described over and over again in the different scriptures. Okay. The next couple pages, I know the next page explains some of, he proclaims his own qualities. I am the protector, I am the creator, I am the nourisher, I am the knowing, I am the holiest heavenly one. My name is the healing. My name is God. My name is great, wise one. My name is the pure. I am called the majestic, the far-seeing. I am called the watcher, the augmenter, and so on through a list of 72 names.
They have the same in Judaism.
I was say, don't they do that in the Bible?
Yeah, and in Hinduism also they have something similar. I wonder if those are actually esoteric things. There is something esoteric behind more than just a description.
And same with the Brahman. I am, who talks about they are
Great.
all they are. I read that one a while ago, but that was in the Upanishads and
Yeah.
how they are, yes. And
Same.
so I kind of got that feeling from it.
Mhm.
But in my understanding, though, is the Ahura Mazda is a god created by a source.
A what?
Yeah, I would say emanated from more than
Emanated from.
Right. Yeah. Yes. Yes. Yeah, and I wanted to say, sorry, one thing. We all understand, or did we read, or did I make it up, that Zoroaster was an adept from the Egyptian brotherhood. Did I make that up?
I don't know about the Egyptian brotherhood. He was an adept.
Yeah, he was, yeah.
Okay, so we'll just leave
I
it.
think you made it up. Sounds good.
Regarding the idea that Ahura Mazda was emanated or created, is that Blavatsky says that in all ancient traditions, the creator was never the highest God. I mean, it is the highest God within creation,
Right.
but the creator is never the ultimate God. And in Christianity, sometimes you see that in the mystics with the difference between God and the Godhead.
Mhm.
The Godhead is something far more abstract than God as a person. So this seems to be similar to the esoteric philosophy in that sense.
Principle.
Right, on the next page, it says, but before taking up the point about the Trinity, and we can go back to the previous paragraph that starts Ahura Mazda is revealed as threefold. But just to stay on the point that we are, I'm on the paragraph after that. But before taking up that point, we must recognize that according to the ancient teaching, there was behind and beyond Ahura Mazda, the one, the unknowable, the boundless time, who is denied by Orientalists in Europe, who know nothing of the occult teaching. That was one other thing that she really was fighting against. You could hear
Yeah.
the materialism of the Europeans. So I think that's what she was trying to convince.
Or the argument.
Yeah. Okay, so do we want to go back to the paragraph above and talk about the Trinity? Because she does talk a lot about that. I got the impression that Ahura Mazda, I pictured it like 3 dots.
Right.
Or a triangle.
A triangle.
Right, so like Ahura Mazda at the top, and then one was spirit and one was matter. And then they give a bunch of other names in there too. I forgot what the Zoroastrian names were, but
I'm surprised that she spent so much time in this talk going into cosmology, when for me the most important thing about the faith is that God is within, is that the connection with the human spirit. And what does that mean for the practitioner? It seems to me that's the most important link with the occult teaching, is that God is not outside its creation, but that we are, as human beings, made in the likeness of the highest spirit. So for me, all of these details about the Trinity and all the hierarchy of intelligences is far less important than our relation, actually our essential oneness with the spirit within, whether we call it Ahura Mazda or whatever. So the fact that there is a life beyond Ahura Mazda is interesting and consistent with the occult teaching. And later on, she says that the 7 principles in our nature are the same in Zoroastrianism, but nowhere is there really emphasized the fact of the possibility of human transformation. and really the idea of oneness with the highest spirit within us, thence with all other forms of life. So I'm kind of missing that in this presentation.
But I think, yeah, but she seems to emphasize other things. You know, purity is paramount. And maybe that, I don't know, you know, and it almost seems like we were coming to that connection with the divine in you and such, but it never seems to come through.
Think we don't see the European hecklers in the crowd that were giving her a hard time, that made her switch from what Maria was saying to justifying the parts in it. That's what I'm going to go with.
Yeah, this book seems similar to the aims that HPV had in her writings. HPV also many times spends a lot of time comparing and justifying, and I think that's more an attempt at changing the cultural view of these things, not so much the mystical aspect. So it seems that Besant was doing something similar there.
Right.
It seems common anyway with a lot of religions, isn't it? I mean, I think of Buddhism and I don't see a teaching much about the unity of life, that we are all one. And the same even in Christianity,
Mhm.
except for the fact that, you know, we're all children of God, or a statement like in Him we move and have our being. There's really no teaching about the oneness of everything.
Well, if you go deeply into the saints and their experiences, there is more of that in the individual saints and the orders they uh, formed. There's this deep connection inside, deep connection, the oneness, one with God, and the oneness, nature, and oneness of all that. Saint Francis. But in the church itself, and all the churches, they don't even have oneness among their churches, let alone, you know, they're not united in a teaching of that we all are one. And that's what we need right now, when the cultures and divisions that are going on. So we're all one with this wonderful intelligence, creator, whatever was made us, brought this whole thing about. So interesting.
I kind of get the impression that when Zoroaster was on the earth and his teachings came out, that it was a time of where everyone just knew that there was oneness. And so by everything they do, maybe their oneness is this purity. Could that, you know, be a synonym for that? So oneness in your deeds, oneness in your thoughts, oneness in your
being, whatever.
Thoughts, good
Action.
So that's the impression that I get, that the very teachings of themselves, like it's assumed a oneness in all. I don't know.
Yeah, we kind of experienced some of that in the 60s and 70s, this oneness, Buddhism coming together with Christianity, and all, everything was open and we were studying, and it was all like that in the 70s, 60s, a feeling of oneness within and with each other and the religions. I felt that anyway. It was a very interesting time. Everything was opened up, and everything was free and loving, and you know, people were seeking knowledge, but they're finding it, and it was just an incredible time. And I think that was that sense of oneness. Krishnamurti was here, and people coming in from all over the world. I'm just going over these different facets other than Zoroastrian. Zoroastrian was a part of that. And so, you know, people coming in from different countries with their bringing their culture into these grand meetings we had, whatever, who was ever presiding. We had so many different leaderships in various religions and coming in at that time. openness. And so there was a sense of oneness at that. Then it went away again. Materialism came in, business and all that. So I think it's probably the same thing. It's a kind of a cyclic thing. When you have that sense of oneness, it comes into the religions. And
I would say that probably historically, because in Hinduism, all the Upanishads talk about that oneness, and Brahman is one, and all that is Brahma, the one without the second. So Hinduism placed emphasis on the oneness, at least since the time of the Upanishads. But it's true that in the other religions, that's not an emphasis in general.
Except, as I said, in the sects, different sects, or other sects, monastic maybe.
Okay, so on I'm on page 70 with the paragraph that starts, apart from all occult testimony. That is enough to establish that Zarathustra taught the ancient doctrine of the unmanifested one existence from which the manifested came forth. And we further read of its primeval sacrifice performed by God himself, from which Ahura Mazda was produced. We know by the hint, so dark to the many, but so clear to the few. The primeval sacrifice, the limitations by which manifestation has rendered possible, was also taught by Zarathustra, as it is known to every student of occultism, and is hinted over and over in the scriptures of the world. So, is that oneness?
Sounds like it.
I don't know. I'm just asking. I'm asking if that's.
Yeah, even if it is, I think what Elena was saying is that it's not a central teaching.
Oh, right.
We can dig and find traces, but it was obviously not a central teaching in many religions.
Right. Yeah. Anybody else have any comments going forward? On page 71, to the occultist, knowing that Zarathustra was a member of the brotherhood, there can be, of course, no doubt as to his teaching on this fundamental truth, but for others, the external testimony ought to be sufficient. Okay. Then she returns to the threefold Ahura Mazda and his unfolding in order that creation might be. We learn that from him, duality proceeded from Spento Manush and Angra Manush, two principles that had their root in him. And later on, the original duality is not of good and evil, but of spirit and matter, of reality and non-reality, of light and darkness, of construction and destruction, the two poles between which the universe is woven and without which no universe can be.
Mm-hmm.
So, she goes on.
She does, talk about this, but she talks a lot about the light and dark, lightness, light, eternal light versus darkness, and the duality, spirit and matter, reality, non-real, light and darkness, and all of that. And I'm sorry?
I just said the polarities. I was talking to myself. I said the polarities.
Right. Polarities, dualities, but that, and then when we think of it in esoteric and theosophical terms, we're told, well, it's not good, bad. There has to be duality.
Yeah.
It has to be the two opposites.
Electronic.
Right. So I wasn't sure if that's what we were, if that's what they were, or she was describing in Zoroastrianism, is that the same concept?
Normally, Zoroastrianism is regarded as a dualistic religion, where good and evil are these opposites, are two different principles. I don't know if that's what it was originally, but in general, that's how Zoroastrianism is regarded.
Oh, really?
Today,
She says here, the destruction of form means the passing on of life into higher conditions, not the work of an evil power, but the liberation of the soul, and therefore a part of the divine manifestation of the universe. They are also spoken as the two masters, as the two creators, as the two spirits. So twins are called twins.
Twins.
Yes, that right. So you, and I think it talks about you choose. Do you follow, right, at some point?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that made me think of in Theosophy when they talk about anything that that moves towards oneness is the good. Anything that moves away from oneness is considered evil, right? Did I say that right?
But then yet there's no evil or good, we're kind of, so I'm, again, are you, if you're following reality, following unreality, are you, then do you get back to evolving? Are you moving forward in evolution or higher in evolution versus staying in the same place, not moving forward, not spiritually developing?
Yeah, because even that description of good and evil, philosophically speaking, is true now, but there was a period in evolution where good and evil were the opposite. When consciousness going into separation was the good, and consciousness trying to remain in the unity was evil.
Yeah.
So that would be the downward.
Evolution. Yeah. The downward.
Ascent.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So good and evil are all relative to what is needed at that time in cycle.
Going back a little bit, Michelle, when you're talking about the twins, it was interesting. It says, in the beginning, there was a pair of twins, two spirits, each of a peculiar activity. That's again, in the blue book, it's on page 73. And I found that interesting when you talk about a peculiar activity, each having its, I guess, place in the back and forth play between the two. I've never really seen it expressed like that, indicating a type of energy, interplay between two different types of energy.
Okay. Anything more about the Trinity? Ahura Mazda and the twins? Okay. Further on down that page, then we come to next in order come the hierarchies of the heavenly intelligences. And she lists them here, and this is where she tries to explain or argue that they're not characteristics of Ahura Mazda, but they are actual living intelligences. She compares to theosophy, a conception familiar, the higher triad. La, 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 la. All right. Sometimes Ahura Mazda is placed at the head as one of them. Sometimes they form the lower septenary, above them being the higher triad, a conception familiar to every theosophist who knows that the universe is a decade represented by the lower seven and the higher three, as in the Sirroth of the Jewish Kabbalah. So, and then she lists the 7 of them: the good mind, the best holiness, power, love, health, immortality, and fire.
76.
Okay. Then she lists 3 excerpts that kind of are examples of teachings that justify them as intelligences and not qualities.
Right. Who's Dr. Mills?
He must have been a scholar. There's 2 of them she mentions.
Right, she mentioned 2 different people.
Yeah, and they must have been scholars at the time who had a different thinking.
From the Europeans there, that, the challenging group, the materialists.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. Thank you.
Yeah, Dr. Haig.
Haig, yeah.
Dr. Mills. So. Okay, we'll just keep flipping through. It says here, I'm on page 78 right now, but the Yasnas are full of worship of the highest gods of Mithra, of the goddess of the waters, of Shrosh, of one of the mightiest of the great intelligences, of the sun, moon, and stars. In fact, the whole fabric of Zoroastrianism would be destroyed if the worship of the gods is wrenched out of it in deference to European materialism. In it, as in Hinduism, the gods are everywhere, and as the worshiper ascends, he worships loftier and loftier intelligences until he reaches Ahura Mazda, of whose will they are the agents by whose life are sustained. Okay, then we talk about, now we come on to the fire, the supreme symbol of God, the symbol of divine life, that which is called the sun of Ahura Mazda, the sacred symbol most reverenced by the Zoroastrians today. Then she gives some examples. Fire has been the symbol of, I'm in the next paragraph, in every religion. Fire has been the symbol of the supreme God. Brahman is fire. Ahura Mazda is fire. The Jews saw their God as a pillar of fire, and the Christians proclaim our God is a consuming fire. Everywhere fire has been and is the supreme emblem, for he who is glory is revealed as fire. Now, I have a question. The light of the logos, would that be the same in here? No, I'm just.
What's called the light of the logos is Daivi Prakriti, which is Fohat on before differentiation began.
Right, so isn't that the fire?
I don't know. Fire.
The fire is one.
Fohat could be seen as fire, but light of the logos, yeah, maybe.
Right.
It's not said anywhere.
Right, I was just drawing an analogy connection. Who knows? Yeah. Okay, so on the next page, and the whole universe is but the outcome of the living flame. Picture Zarathustra, when standing by the altar, he first spoke to the people and taught them the truths that the fire had revealed to him, the sons of the fire who sent him to the earth. Remember what is said in one of those oracles which reproduce the early tradition. When thou beholdest a sacred fire, formless, flashing, dazzling throughout the world. Hear thou the voice of the fire. Then I think she just kind of talks about the fire, the rod of fire, how many traditions get the fire in their ceremonies. I'm on page 82 now. Oh, yes, Pablo. I think you're muted. No.
I can't hear you.
Nope.
Now you hear?
Yes.
No?
Yes.
I feel that when I read this chapter, very confusing, and it's like a lecture prepared with a lot of information, but it's too complicated. It's not clear. So if I go to investigate it by my own about Zoroastrianism, I found more things which are the more essential at that time in the religion. It was to teach the community to live in good relation with nature and with the other people, with the nature, with everything. What is here in this chapter is a lot of information which it was like a rush to prepare a lecture, and also long sentences. And I feel we don't enjoy this conversation. I feel we guess, I think it's okay, but we don't know the essence of any religion. And most at that time, it was to help the community to agriculture, to do agriculture, art, literature, teach the individual to be good with themselves and with everything. So my main question is, if we don't enjoy, we really don't study. It's no cheap criticism. Well, what do you think?
No, I know I didn't enjoy reading this as much as the first part or the other things I read, but I did notice that if I stuck through it till the end, I could see some order in what she's trying to say. I think maybe she, like I said, she deviated from her original talk because there were hecklers in the crowd. So.
And also it's a presentation, it's an oral presentation versus where she's writing a section for a book, something like that. So I think the approach is different. You've got limited time to cover a lot of topics. I think she really just touches on the superficial aspects of the structure. And then for whatever reason, it might be what was going on at the time or what was going on in that location. She seems to go into some detail for a specific reason that seemed to make sense to her and what the environment which she was in. But it is, I did find I had to almost read it like I was listening to a talk rather than like I was reading a study text. And that at least helped me understand it better, because it does get fragmented, but a lot of her writings are copies of speeches she gave. She was such a great orator. and that helped me just to make believe I was sitting in the audience rather than I'm doing a study book. And we've all given talks, and a lot of times you deviate because someone asks a question, or you see some people in the audience that have an interest in A and B. You wing it you wing it a little bit. That's part of the freedom in giving a talk.
Well, I wondered too, because of the problem with the writings and the loss of the writings too, she's trying to put something together, put fragments together and make a story out of it, from, missing information and such. And so that could also be coming through here.
Bringing in the history of it, creating,
Right.
Yeah.
make sure we have a history and knowledge of in that way, which we do need. We have in our own lives, we don't have enough history writing down now either.
I guess it'd be interesting to understand how long she spoke for.
Yeah.
I mean, for this, there's quite a bit of writing here. I'm assuming it was all one talk, not a couple of lectures, but that's a pretty long time to speak. I actually don't know. I don't know if anyone else has a little background on.
The thing is no to explain why she wrote in this way or the other way. My main thing is, are we enjoy in studying this? I don't know, I mean, because maybe enjoy in another is how effective is to the audience. I imagine this lecture, 50 pages, is a lot of information, but it's like a encyclopedic. It's no something with order, and you see the foundation, the Zoroastrianism, why it happens, and what was the purpose, all these things. I think, well,
This is just all we can do is an overview.
Overview.
We can't really go so deeply in the short time that we have, so deeply into a religion. This is more like just to find, for example, common themes.
Comments, yeah.
Like I said last week, the study of comparative religion is really to find truth. So you look for common themes in all of these religions, and that points towards truth. So yeah, maybe it's a little bit intellectual rather than like, how do we live this?
Yes.
Like a textbook in a way.
Because let's say I try to find something which I can select that paragraph, and with that paragraph I can see a lot.
He's talking about how he had a hard time looking for quotations to put on the website that would be inspiring.
It's something like that, because you find something, but let's say, for ancient Zoroastrianism knew nothing of the modern materialism, which tries to place God at one pole of the universe and man on this world at the other, with a mighty gap, a bare and empty space between them. In Zoroastrianism, as in every other ancient faith, there was no gap in the universe, no empty space, no place where there were no living intelligence, no place where spiritual beings were not working. From men near the base of the ladder to the supreme God, at his head there were ranged intelligences, mounting higher and higher, more and more divine. And all these were objects of adoration, a fact to which the whole literature of Zoroastrianism bears testimony. See, I think this is, I select this, but then I thought, going to impact in the person who read this, going to say, how much going to inspire or to awake the curiosity to go and look for this religion.
But maybe
I
that
don't know
was
if
not,
I try to, if you understand me, or I don't know.
no, I know, but in the book, maybe that was not Besant's intention. This is more, again, I think I see more what HPV used to do. Besant is trying to point to facts that show that there is a commonality behind all religions. And then she has other writings that are more inspiring and, talking about the mysticism. But this one is more about trying to show how the different religions have similar things, the trinities, all this hierarchy of beings, etc., etc.
Yeah. Understand. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a bit of history too. Mrs.
All
Illy.
right. The last part of the book talks about man, and I see where she puts like man as the microcosm. She talks about why Zoroastrianism might have made the duality from good to evil, their emphasis on purity, what happens after death. And then it talks about the virtues, and it had the virtues of the four like classes, and then the 7 principles, which were similar to our 7 principles in theosophy, or the 7 principles in theosophy. So that's about it. Does anybody else have any final comment?
Yeah, I just have one, Michelle. In the blue book on page 83, at the beginning of the paragraph, it says, even now, it says, there is still a faint echo of the ancient truth. Although the power has departed, and no Parsi Daster can summon fire from on high. I mean, I kind of interpreted that whoever was helping to guide this initial development has left, or somehow the connection with them has left, and people who are left now need to move forward. But I just found that a little strange. I don't know what anybody else's thoughts are. We talked about that people came here and, were helping to develop all of this, and now it's saying it's left. So
it was my understanding that as in man, whence, whither, and how,
Yeah.
whither. Yeah, that was what the progression was. Man was led by gods, or
right.
walked on the earth with gods, and then there were the philosopher kings, and then there were the intelligent kings that were at least moral, and then it just went downhill from there.
I mean, it almost sounds like you're on your own and there's no more reinforcements coming. Swim or sink. I mean, it was just pretty black and white. I mean,
Yeah.
I think one of the most, for me, one of the loveliest descriptions was of the fire ceremony, where fire is gathered from all kinds of places in the town, every home in the town. And And that fire it's very similar to what happens in homeopathic medicine, where a substance is more and more purified. And the description of how they do that, 9 times that the fire is held up, and each time the fire that is generated is more pure. And I found that ceremony really, really beautiful. And as I've said before, which is really important for me in the Mahatma letters, the Master KH says that the sublimest form of fire is Buddhi, the flame of inspiration. And so here, this ceremony beautifully describes that. And then when they say that every Zoroastrian bows before that fire, and then a fragment of the fire is carried through every room as the house darkens at night, an emblem of the purifying and protecting power of the Supreme. Those things are really important for me. You know, how do these beliefs actually take form in everyday life? And how little by little do we understand that that flame is actually in the deepest heart of each one of us, as the voice of the silence affirms. The flame is allowed to retire into the deepest abode, the abode of the world's mother, the heart. And of course, there the reference is partly to Kundalini. But fire is such an important symbol for even for us. Anyway, I just wanted to say that because I feel as though she doesn't really touch into things that come alive for me until later on in her talk, almost when she's done. And then it's only a few little hints she gives as to how the Zoroastrian finds that fire purified in every creature and in every activity. That to me is the essence of this faith. I'm sorry that she has so much overlay, which to me is interesting, but not the heart of this faith.
I think fire is really a very interesting symbol. We could talk about fire for so long. I mean, we could spend so much time on it. Even just the idea that, you know, let's say you start with one candle, you could light so many from that one, and it will never be diminished. So what does that mean for us? I mean, it's such a beautiful thought, right? So there's so much in fire that we could keep exploring.
Janine Miller has written a beautiful essay. I think the title of it is The Sacred Flame, and where she talks about the place of Agni in the Vedas. And Agni as the high priest, Agni as the fire on the hearth. It's just amazing. And all of these elements, earth, air, water, and fire, have their place. And I think it's a wonderful, wonderful study, and especially fire for us is important. Anyway.
Well, I think this is the fire is good if we can get the flame and the favor of the teaching of Zoroaster. We will be very happy. I think that is the essence of Zoroastrianism, is just that very, very deep. And I try to find a book from Nietzsche. I cannot find. I don't know where I put it, but very, very philosophical and very, like Stefan Heller say, very profound. But is what is applicable to us. That is the main importance today, because this Zoroastrianism is very old religion. And who knows why Annie Besant give this lecture and then put it here in the book. But thank you for letting me say something, even if it's not, I don't know what to say. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, I don't think there's ever a wasted moment or, you know, a wasted reading. You know, like you said, we all just kind of agreed that this was a little difficult at first, but there are definitely pearls and gems that we can pull out of anything and apply it to, you know, what inspires us. So. Okay, any last words from anybody who hasn't had any words yet today? Rosanna, Ananya, Jim. Oh, Jim said something, I think. Okay.
I would piggyback on the idea that it does, whatever it is that we're studying has to have personal meaning. I think that is important.
I think that if we were dwelling more deeply into the religion, we would find deep meanings that would be applicable to our lives. It's just we're skimming the surface. We're using material that is, it's very general, right? But if we could really have time to look into the religions, I'm sure they're all beautiful in their own way.
Absolutely. That's what's so important about studying the various religions.
The cultures that they people coming from those cultures. You know, I had some Iranian folks I worked with, nurses, and also our young man over at the Rite Aid is from Iran. There's a very special quality. It's kind of a settledness. It's pragmatic, but not really. You feel a really deep understanding, particularly with I forget his name now, Saddam. Uh, when you talk with him, he's listening, and he has a real way, a real wisdom. He's a young man. And it was the same thing with the folks that I work with, the Iranian, I guess it's Iran, nurse, supervisor, and her husband. They really had a so dignified and so gracious and a wonderful way to deal with the problems that came up with our nurses' aides, people that work with us, in the way they treated them and their supervision. So gracious and so wise. And I was very impressed and have been impressed. And that comes from their culture. It comes from the culture is created by these religions. And you can see that. I mean, I was really, it's a higher level. You know, we have our
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Next month, I believe, is Judaism.
Oh,
and I will send out an email. If anybody has any ideas on readings, or if anyone would like to facilitate Robert Elwood's book on the second Tuesday, shoot me an email. Okay. All right. Blessings and
Bye-bye.
salutations.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.